Good morning, everyone. My name's Allison Strike, and I'm a Deputy Director at Carver County CDA, and just finishing up my third and final year serving as co-chair for the statewide Homes for All Coalition. Even as the coronavirus pandemic has restricted our ability to rally together in person to support affordable housing for all Minnesotans, our housing crisis has become more urgent than ever. Like many issues, as Pastor Sue indicated, working to solve Minnesota's affordable housing crisis is complex, but a safe, affordable, and accessible home is a necessary foundation if we want to have better educational outcomes for our children, healthcare that has meaningful long-term benefits, and economic stability for our communities. We can make progress towards meeting Minnesota's affordable housing needs and help to provide stimulus to the economy at the same time with a large investment in affordable housing through a bonding bill. Some of you may be wondering what bonding is. Well, state bonds for affordable housing are a vital tool that can be used to support affordable housing across the state. It has the potential to create thousands of jobs, cultivate economic prosperity for our communities, and provide stable homes for our most vulnerable populations, including seniors, children, and those with disabilities. Today, we renew our request and are asking the legislature to invest in affordable housing through the bonding bill. Housing resources in the bonding bill are the largest source of housing development support from the state, and these investments will fund shovel-ready projects and will not only help stabilize people's lives, but also stimulate the economy in both greater Minnesota and in the metro. I'd like to take a second to acknowledge the hard work that so many coalition members put into advancing our collective work. We have passionate people and organizations supporting our communications, engagement, and policy work. We are constantly striving to be more inclusive, and we are especially thankful to those with lived experience helping to inform and drive the work we do. I'd especially like to thank Janelle Freeman Anderson and Rome Daring for their work with the coalition, and for all of those with us today sharing your important personal perspective. And now I am so honored to introduce Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. Together, they have truly helped to elevate and reshape the conversations around affordable housing in Minnesota, and we are so thankful. Governor Walz.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Allison, and good morning, everyone. I hope each of you as well as your families and your neighbors. I want to say thank you for taking the time this morning. Thank you for your passion. I also thank you for taking social distancing seriously. It pains the Lieutenant Governor myself as much as anything. We're pretty extroverted, and I think many of you on this call, if you were there last year, the energy that you brought and the passion of the advocacy to make sure that everyone lives with dignity and that housing is foundational to all of those things. We are truly grateful. The pandemic is certainly exposing the rifts and the inequities in our society, and as many of you on this call, you've known for a long time. There's an awful lot of work to do around housing. I think we got off to a good start last year, but the pandemic only reinforces our commitment to housing. In normal times, housing and housing instability have dramatic effects, as the folks on this call certainly know. But when a time of pandemic and we issue a stay-at-home order and there's no home to stay at, the implications are huge. And we have never lost focus of the importance of housing as a public health, an individual and a public health issue. Housing is a social determinant of health, and that is becoming more apparent, both individual and societal health. So we know not everyone's feeling the impacts at the same rate. Lieutenant Governor will talk a little bit about that and has been very clear with our state's response to never for a minute forget that. Oftentimes our indigenous communities of color, are struggling with housing, and that has just been exacerbated. So our administration has taken steps early to support the stability and safety of those folks. Of course, very early on, we issued a moratorium on evictions to keep people stable. And next, we were partnering with the legislature, both federal and state, to get resources out quickly to make sure we have housing and rental assistance, as well as those experience homelessness. I think many of you on this call know we kicked off a pretty unprecedented public-private partnership last fall and early into this spring to deal with winter homelessness. And that was felt and was a crisis, and now seeing it be exacerbated by COVID-19. there's work to do, big things to do in the legislature. So we're down to about 10 days. And this is just as simple as this. The legislature needs to pass the funding around housing. And now more than ever, we don't need to negotiate a small number. We don't need to pretend this isn't an issue. What we need to do is we need to make sure that folks and those that we're already experiencing, and the vast number that now realize, many of us, many in the middle class, are a paycheck or two away from housing instability. And that is one of the things that I think now, not just this committed group and the folks that you were able to talk to last year, I think across Minnesota, this has really come home. So we're going to continue to call on the legislature to get this done in the next 10 days. We know that we're going to have to tackle this. We know that COVID-19 will end, and we know that our commitment to ending homelessness is stronger now than ever. So I have to tell you, I've had the opportunity to visit places, and those of you listening, and I heard the explanation about bonding dollars. We were out at Minnehaha Commons when we kicked off our bonding tour early this year. We are being very, very clear that these investments help finance buildings. They create new homes, create new opportunities, and let's be absolutely clear, they add back to the economy. They provide dignity to people, they provide safety, they improve public health, and they also provide economic growth. So these are smart investments. So the Lieutenant Governor and I, we are asking for $200 million in housing infrastructure bonds and $60 million for general obligation bonds. This, again, would be the biggest commitment Minnesota has made in and around housing and affordable housing. And I know that the Senate DFLers just put out their bill. It matches these numbers. The House will have these numbers or more. And I just want to make it very clear, and I know I do not dabble in the partisanship when I don't need to, but it's as simple as this. If we can get the folks in the Minnesota Senate to agree with this, lives will be improved, and this will be done as early as next week. All the advocacy that many of you put in over years, we're finally going to see real numbers. So we'll continue to beat the drum, but what I can tell you is no one beats that drum harder than Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, someone who comes from the world of nonprofits, someone who understands the least fortunate need to have a voice, and to have that voice set side by side with myself in the Lieutenant Governor's office makes all the difference in the world. So with that, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan.
Thanks so much, Governor, and good morning, everybody. I'm really happy that we can come together virtually today for the Homes for All rally. And thank you, Governor, for being such a strong champion for housing. You know, I wish that we were together with one another today, feeling the roar and the energy of advocates who care passionately about housing and dignity for all Minnesotans in the Rotunda. But we can't be, but I think we can still roar and make our voices heard. You know, the governor talked about health, and we know that safe and stable housing is the foundation of success. You need a place to call home in order to do your homework, or right now to be able to do distance learning. And for our kids, this is really, really important. Housing outcomes improve, educational outcomes improve, job and financial outcomes improve when folks have a home. And having a home is transformative in improving nearly every aspect of our well-being. And in the context of COVID-19, when we ask people to stay home, they need a home. Housing is and has always been about health, and this pandemic has transformed our understanding of that. As many of you know, Minnesota was already facing a housing crisis before this pandemic hit. We are short hundreds of thousands of units of housing, and this has serious consequences. It means far too many Minnesotans have little to no access to housing that is affordable to them, and it means that far too many of us are cost burdened just to keep a roof over our heads. The pandemic, you know, I think is showing many of us what we knew already, but I think some have called COVID-19 the great equalizer, and I don't think anything could be further from the truth. This pandemic has laid bare the existing inequities in our system and disparities, and I think that this absolutely includes our housing system. We know that Minnesotans who have lost jobs or income are struggling to pay their rents and mortgages, and they are disproportionately from Indigenous communities and communities of color. These are also the communities that are bearing an unequal share of the housing instability and experiencing homelessness at disproportionate rates. And we cannot let these stories go untold and unheard, which is why I am so glad to be with you today. The governor and I've laid out steps that we're taking and the ones that still need to get done, but let me just hammer those home once again and make them crystal clear. The eviction moratorium that the governor signed is keeping people safe. And I want to identify that that eviction moratorium was the first step. The second step is to really secure funding through the $100 million for the FHPAP to help residents and property owners from falling behind and keep property owners stable. And you guys, this is still a bonding session, and we have to secure a large and historic investment in housing through the bonding bill, as the governor mentioned. We put our proposal, which is the largest ask ever in housing infrastructure bonds, through the governor's office, through an administration. The Senate put out theirs, the House will put out theirs. I know that many advocates on this call are asking for $500 million, and I say keep asking. We absolutely need to dream big, especially in this moment where we see the inequities of this crisis. And these are the ways that we can get money into the hands of Minnesotans who really need it the most. And these are ways that we can build and preserve housing. What this pandemic has really revealed is that affordable housing is more important than ever before to maintain health and well-being during and after this public health crisis. And we need your partnership in this fight. I know that at the beginning I spoke about the special energy at the end of session rallies and the roar, and I am here to ask you to bring that level of energy to the end of session as well, because it will be needed to get these housing policies and investments that our state deserves across the finish line. There are 10 days until the end of the legislative session, and there are far too many leaders who do not see real Minnesotans who are struggling. These are Minnesotans that to many of these leaders, they were invisible before the crisis, and they continue to be invisible during the crisis. And our job is to make the invisible visible. In the last 10 days of session, we have the opportunity to lift up individuals and families who are struggling to stay in their homes, to ensure that there are narratives behind these numbers, and that folks simply cannot be ignored. I thank you for your continued advocacy in these unprecedented circumstances, and I'm really grateful for your partnership. Let's get some wins for housing, and just know that as we are looking towards recovery, that too often I've heard people say we need to get back to normal. I'm not interested in getting back to normal, because normal was not working, and it certainly was not working for people who are experiencing housing instability or who are experiencing homelessness. So let's not get back to normal. Let's get back to better. You are partners in that work with us, and the governor and I are so grateful to be on this team with you. Chimiigwech, thank you so much.
Thank you so much again, Governor Wells and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, for joining us on our virtual rally today. We really, really appreciate it. Next in our lineup, I'm going to turn it over to Terry Burton.
There we go. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to everybody I can't see. My name's Terry, and how I got to Minnesota was alcohol fueled. I had lost respect of family, friends, everybody due to that. And I fled here because my daughter lives here now. And I've had nothing but the best care since I've been here, you know. Even if I've had to challenge a couple of things, it's real important to have a roof over your head at night. I am a walking anomaly with other things, but I actually was homeless, but I owned my own home. I couldn't keep up with it because I'm on disability. The importance of having housing, that entitlement, that right as a human being to have shelter that is safe and affordable and good for people. Abraham Maslow set up his pyramid, the triangle, and at the very bottom of it was housing, place to lay your head at night. I know that when I have progressed in my life, even in the last 3 years, it's been because I've had a roof over my head and people who care. You know, the people, we bond together as people who are homeless, and the staff bonds together to help us. That's an important first step to getting stabilized housing for everyone. And I know that we can't stress the importance of it, getting that bonding taken care of, getting the money to have families. Never mind the single people that are out in tents, the whole families. How are these kids supposed to learn? And I'm not sure the exact statistics, but the children outnumber the adults as homeless. How are they expected to get an education even in this time of COVID-19? You know, this disease is affecting every area and everybody, you know, and it affects the people that are out there without shelter over their heads at night. Safe shelter, affordable shelter. It's an entitlement, it's a human right. Oh, I'm getting fired up, aren't I? Oh yes, Catholic Charities housing programs, yes. Catholic Charities has been a part of my life ever since my son was born, and he'll be 39, I believe, tomorrow. Catholic Charities, there's just a great model of how you do it for people down here, and I can just about bet that there isn't anything like it in the country anywhere else. And if it is, hey, show me so I can tell other people. This is a unique setting. You know, we have higher ground, and we have the new Dorothy Day and the shelter. And 1 minute left. Hey, you guys, bonding, money, we need it. We're the cheerleaders for this. We're the go-getters for this. And I help people at my level of homelessness, now I'm in transitional housing, to understand that there are people out there that are fighting for us and want to see us be happy and productive. Thanks a lot. Everybody stay healthy and safe. Peace.
Okay, so virtual rally is new to all of us, so I'm going to ask everybody to bear with us. We are waiting for our next speakers to come on. So we have a couple of polls. So I'm just going to take a minute here and share a poll if everybody on the line can participate. And we'll just give you a few more seconds, and then we will share the results with you. A lot of people joining us from Hennepin County, but it's awesome to see the participation we have from greater Minnesota in addition to the Twin Cities. Let's see, I know we are still waiting for, oh, we have a new speaker on, which may be one of ours. Matt, do you want a quick check on the newest person who's on with the phone number? 447, the phone number ending in 447, who just joined?
I believe that is Senator Westrom.
Okay. So we are fortunate today to be joined by lawmakers from both the Senate and the House in support of affordable housing as a broad statewide and bipartisan support. So Senator Westrom is from Elbow Lake and is the chair of the Ag Rural Development and Housing Finance Chair. So thank you for giving us your time today and for your work in support of affordable housing.
Thank you. Great to be with you all for this housing rally. Greetings from the state Senate and the state legislature. We've got a lot of issues in front of us with the these unprecedented.
Senator Westrom, you're on mute. There we go. Oh. Unmute your, sorry. Can you hear us, Senator Westrom? You're muted again. There you go.
Is that better now?
Yes,
Can
now
you
we
hear
can
me?
hear you. Yep, you're good.
You can. Okay, great. Did you hear anything I said?
We just heard a brief introduction and then you cut out. So just go ahead and start over.
Okay, all right, sounds great. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thanks for joining this housing rally. Greetings from the state Senate and the state Capitol. These unprecedented times are certainly unique and something we're all trying to navigate through. I know one of the issues that you guys are advocating for is how do we find ways to get more housing built and more housing home ownership opportunities in Minnesota. And that's something we in the Senate are very interested in as well. One of the issues we have focused on a lot is how do we reform so our housing costs aren't $20,000 to $80,000 higher per unit than our neighboring states and other areas in the upper Midwest. And so part of our focus has been how do we not just spend more and get less housing, how can we stretch those dollars further and get more housing with the dollars that are so precious from the taxpayers. And in these troubled times, with the budget that we just had announced this week, that need is going to be even greater. And so as we conclude this session, we are looking for ways to make true reforms to bring down that cost of housing, to get more home ownership opportunities out across all of Minnesota, including rural Minnesota and the metro area, and that American dream can be realized for so many more people if we can bring that housing cost down, along with housing infrastructure bonds that we could pass at the legislature. But doing one without the other is not going to change the trajectory we're on. And so we think it's time we need to do both and put great investments into housing, but we need to do great reforms to bring that cost down so we're not $20,000 to $80,000 more per unit. And those costs aren't just one place. It's building codes, it's permits, it's regulations, it's energy codes. And we have looked at that. There's been great groups that have worked on this, committees in the past. Senator Draheim has been a leader on this. Many of you guys have joined those commissions and committees, and we want to work together to make our dollars stretch further and not continue to spend more for less housing in Minnesota. And so I appreciate you putting the focus on housing and the need for it, and we want to make those reforms and make that happen this year in the state Senate.
Thank you so much, Senator Westrom, for joining us.
Thank you.
So Senator Isaacson is from Shoreview and sits on the Ag, Rural Development and Housing Policy Committee, as well as the Human Service Reform, Finance and Policy Committee. He's a constant supporter of Homes for All and the work that we do. Thank you, Senator Isaacson.
Well, thanks for having me here today. You know, when we talk about how we can solve many of the ills we have in our society, eradicating homelessness and providing low-income housing is probably the #1 thing we can do, as there is no other solution that helps solve so many other problems that are going on in our society than when people have the opportunity to have the kind of home life and security they get from owning a house. And low-income housing is one of the ways we can do that, or at least having a stable place to live. I've been an advocate, and I'm asking for over a $2 billion bonding bill. And I think that the #1 thing we can do with that bonding bill is put that towards affordable housing across the state. I just feel like when I look at so many of the issues we've been dealing with, going back to my very first year in the legislature in the state house, so many times we've seen where affordable housing is just such a game changer to helping us be successful in combating many of the things in society that we're looking at that we need to take care of. And so, you know, I think that having a real close look at how we can provide low-income housing to folks that are not making a ton of money, that have the opportunity to have their own home or a place to live that at least provides them with a stable environment, is not only good for them, it's good for their family, and frankly, it's good for our economy. It just makes sense. The investment we make there will have a payback for us on such a large level. And I know that my friends across the aisle see this problem too. We don't necessarily agree on this reform and getting rid of fees. The reality is that what we need to do is have the political will to make this a priority. And I can tell you that as long as I'm here in the state Senate, that will always be a priority for me, as I'll be pushing for that, especially as we go into the 21 session and we look at possibly being in the majority and making some significant increases. The last time I was in the majority, I wrote the single largest increase in funding for housing in the state in the last 50 years, and I hope to do it again when we look at this next session. I know that we're really right now trying to focus on making sure that we have a strong bonding bill. I think there's will with 3/4 of the leadership, and Senator or Representative Doubt for some reason doesn't seem to think that's a priority, but I think that we should be focused on trying to make sure that we get that bonding bill through as robust as possible, to provide for all kinds of opportunities. And specifically for me, what's most important is helping people who are homeless or experiencing housing instability. Where this strikes me home the most is this idea of when we have kids that are dealing with this. As someone who grew up at times in unstable housing, I can tell you the impact on a kid is just traumatic, and it causes all kinds of setbacks with school. Their nutrition isn't strong. They don't feel secure at home. We need to make sure that we provide for anything, at least for these kids that need to have secure homes, so they can go to school, feel good and learn, and they can get themselves out of a tough spot. So I'm really excited to be here. I just thank you so much for having me be a part of this. And I'm just always been proud to be associated with and a part of Homes for All, because Homes for All is really some of the model of how we can be successful when we collectively work together to instigate differences and changes in our legislature and our culture. And I just hope that Homes for All continues the good work they're doing, because they're absolutely positively one of the positive forces for good up the legislature and in our state. Thank you for having me so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Isaacson, for joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Larson from Duluth. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay, yes. Good morning. That was really, thank you for that. First of all, inviting me and including Greater Minnesota in a strategy of ensuring we have housing for everybody. This is one of my, well, this is actually my first Zoom rally. So I love that today is a chance that we get to kind of preach to the choir, that there are those of us on this call who know and understand the real need for housing, and it feels really good to just be in a virtual room together. And some of the work we're doing right now, all of us, whether we are elected, unelected, you know, advocates, professionals in the field, people experiencing homelessness, people who have that in our backgrounds, you know, we all have an important voice, and we're doing incredible work right now without the feedback that we usually get from being in the same room together. And so I just, first of all, want to thank you for what you're doing, and really just need to reaffirm that housing is not a nice to have, it is a need to have. And what we're seeing here in Duluth is really a strong challenge ahead of us. So prior to COVID-19, we had a affordable housing task force that was not deciding whether affordable housing was an issue. We had already decided it was. It was to build out strategies that would help double down on the creation and preservation of affordable housing. We have had to put some of these strategies on hold, like many of you, having to adapt to something that is constantly changing. It is only going to exacerbate the homelessness and housing insecurity that people feel. And we know, working from home or seeking shelter for many people, how critical it is. This is a time to really be ensuring that people have health and access to the things that they need. So here are the things that I'm hoping for from this legislative session. And I know we all come with our hopes and dreams, but I think on this issue, we're very much aligned. We need funding for shelters. We're seeing here in Chum, and special hello to Matt Trainer. Matt and I knew each other when he worked at Chum and I worked at Chum previous to him. And so we have, that organization at the core of our heart. So we need more funding for shelter. There is no question. There is no question about it. We will see see more people precariously housed, people couch surfing, people doing the very best they can, people living in cars, people living in the woods, people living with insecure housing at great risk to themselves, their families, their loved ones, and those who care about them. So we absolutely need that. We need to go big on a bonding bill. This is the year to do it. Bonding bills help keep people employed, help keep projects moving forward, help secure the health and safety for Minnesotans. We need geo bonds to help ensure that public housing gets the investments that they need. So what we do as a group of people here today will make a difference in the lives of others, because it's our day to make sure that people understand that, yes, we have a pandemic that is happening. We need to pay very close attention to it. And we have these underlying issues that we can't go back to the old normal of just piecing together our housing plan for the state of Minnesota. We need to advance a new normal that is about prioritizing the housing needs for all people across the state of Minnesota. So here in Duluth, we have a really large affordable housing problem. We have landlocked considerations that make it really hard for us to do economies of scale, but we are doing everything that we can. We have started new pilot projects that are giving away free land to affordable housing developers. We have a series of projects in the pipeline right now for low-income housing tax credits. So we're doing all that we can. And we stand with you in the state of Minnesota. Thank you to everybody who is on the ground amplifying. We all have our role to play, and it's critical that activism continues. We can't maybe be in the rotunda together, making the noise that helps underscore the need today for legislators to hear, but we are a power team together, and we stick together, we stay on message, we communicate, we advocate, we activate, and we agitate, and we get things done. So I just want to thank Homes for All, the entire coalition, everyone on the call for what you're doing. And just remember that the work is so hard, we're so isolated from each other, and having a moment like today, literally, where like speaker after speaker is going to be lifting up our message and reaffirming why our work together is so important. It is a beautiful choir, and we just need to sing as loud as we can. So thank you so much for having me and Duluth on today to be a part of this.
Thank you so much, Mayor Larson. A lot of our panelists are clapping.
Oh,
we wish we could have clapping from everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we are going to hear from Chad Adams with Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. Good morning, Chad.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me just fine? Hi, can you hear me just fine?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Sounds great. Hi, I'm Chad Adams, the CEO for the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. Just a little background about us. We are a nonprofit community development corporation that serves 30 counties in greater southern and southwest Minnesota. We own 52 affordable housing complexes that include over 1,700 affordable rental apartment units in our regions. Due to our significant presence in greater Minnesota to preserve and grow affordable housing, we strongly support a large bonding bill from the state of Minnesota this year. Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership's mission is to create thriving places to live, work, and grow in the communities that we serve. And we are not able to meet our mission and deliver affordable housing product in greater Minnesota without strong bonding dollars, including housing infrastructure bonds. The demand for adequate housing that is affordable to families across our region is very high. Many of the proposed projects from the past few years that we have proposed have not been funded due to a shortage of funds, even though they've been noted as high quality affordable housing projects by state agencies and many of our partners. In short, there's a great need for more affordable housing to be built in our region, but quite honestly, just insufficient funds to meet the needs of our greater Minnesota families. State bonding will help generate jobs and cultivate economic prosperity for greater Minnesota. State bonding will also provide much needed safe and stable housing for families across the state. In just the past 3 years, greater Minnesota's homeless population has grown by 13%, which is more than the state average. Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership takes great pride and work to include supportive housing units in our projects. One great example is Solace Apartments in St. Peter, Minnesota. And I will defer to a couple of our residents, April, Deb, Kelly, and Troy, that will be speaking a little bit later on today in this rally. When families have safe and stable housing in the communities that we serve, family health improves, children learning improves, and economic prosperity improves through the workforce that is retained and or created in our communities. We're asking the state legislature and governor's office to support a large housing bonding bill this year to build healthy communities and strong economies in our region and throughout the state. Thank you very much again for being able to advocate today.
Thank you so much, Chad. Next, we are going to turn it over to April Schwinal.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is April Schwinal. I'm the proud mother of 3 beautiful little girls, and I'm in recovery from abuse, addiction, and homelessness. I'm here today because of the Solace program. Just 4.5 years ago, I was a stay-at-home mother and respite care provider for Scott County Human Services. I lived a fairly normal life. Following a very difficult separation, within 3 years, my mental health and codependency issues, alongside severe alcoholism and onset drug addiction, caused me to lose my children, my home, and my family. I remember trying to get back up on my feet by contacting the only women's shelter I knew of in the area, and I hung up after about 5 minutes with a really heavy heart because there was no vacancy. My fate was sealed. I was living in a minivan, shooting up meth, in a constant desperation to not allow myself to feel any pain. This is my life now. Several painful months later, I nearly lost my life, and I was shortly thereafter arrested and admitted into intensive inpatient treatment. For 5 months, I worked really hard to improve my mental and emotional health, to free myself from an extremely toxic relationship, and to break the chains that addiction had on my entire life. 2 weeks before graduating inpatient treatment, I laid awake in a panic, completely overwhelmed by the realization that I had nowhere to go. With all the progress I had made, I was feeling more despair than ever before. I was facing homelessness again, and I felt there was very little hope of me remaining safe or sober for long after discharge. I wrote a list of friends and family members I might be able to stay with, knowing as I wrote each name it would be extremely temporary. At the time, there weren't any vacancies at shelters, and regardless of the outcomes I was trying to manifest, the dream of having my daughters home with me again and having my family together had completely dissipated. For a little while, I actually allowed the addiction to tempt me with an escape from these problems and the panic, but instead, I cried until I fell asleep after losing myself in prayer. The very next morning, I received a phone call from Tyler at Solace Apartments. My name was referred to him, and there was a brand new 3-bedroom available. Signing that lease was the most profound moment of my entire life. Right next to the day we moved in and my daughters picked out their own bedrooms for the first time ever. There aren't words to express how truly and genuinely grateful I am. I've made an incredible amount of progress. I'm on my way to achieving my dreams, and I'm going to do great things. I'm raising 3 fierce little women who have an independent, strong, driven, sober, and healthy mother to look up to because we have a safe and stable home of our own. Honestly, I did fall in love with too many women who attended those treatment programs right alongside me and put in the work. Same work I did, but they're not as fortunate today because of a lack of shelters and programs like Solace. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I urge you to support more affordable housing and emergency shelters.
Thank you so much, April. That's the 4th time April has shared her story on behalf of Homes for All. We really appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Norton from Rochester.
Thank you, April, for sharing that. It's the second time I've heard it, and it's just as moving the second time and motivating as well. So thank you. I appreciate Homes for All inviting Rochester to have a voice at the table here. I support strongly all the messages you've heard to this moment about the need for affordable housing. And I want to add to that, energy efficient affordable housing is so necessary. I watch too many poorly built structures hamper people who are placed in them when their energy costs are so high that they can't pay their bills. So I just want to throw that little tidbit in there, so we make sure we're helping people all the way around and not pulling the rug out from under them. I want to talk about something that happened in Rochester. I became mayor just over a year ago, and housing needs were definitely talked about throughout the whole time I ran for office. Everybody agrees we have an issue. You have some of the solutions in your platform. I very much appreciate that. Right after I got elected, I started walking through the halls in Rochester, and I met John and Russell and Patty and so many other individuals who were living in the halls of our skyways. And it became very clear to me very quickly that this wasn't good for them, and it wasn't good for the community either. And we needed to do something. And so we started some partnerships with area nonprofits in our county. And we very quickly agreed to open up homeless warming center, I guess is what they call it. It has 30 bunk beds in it, very tight location at a strip mall. But I volunteer there several times, and I can tell you the clients that use that appreciate it, particularly in our harsh winters. You know, the pandemic then hit and things changed. Our area, the few area places we have for people, Dorothy Day, very small center, interfaith hospitality, again, limited centers, and our strip mall suddenly became unsafe places for people. They were too tightly congregated. Most of them closed in the city. And in working with Catholic Charities in the county, we opened up our civic center, which was empty, of course, because no one's using it right now. And it became a day and night center. Our wonderful library staff housed the day center. Catholic Charities in the county agreed to the night center. And we had, and we put some people that were medically fragile in hotels as a result of that. But we had about 65 people eating meals there, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have over 100 people come in on a daily basis, and not all of them, but many of them spend the night there or go back to hotels. And as was mentioned earlier by the gentleman from Southwest area, this is a growing problem, and it just continues to grow. And my concern now is, as Mayor Larson pointed out, what this pandemic has done is lay bare the issues that we have in a way that we can't ignore. And too many people have been ignoring it. We now are going to be closing this shelter. The county announced this week they're not going to fund the shelter any longer at the end of this month. Well, the homelessness doesn't go away. And even though Dorothy Day may open its house for 20, where are the other 80 people going to go? And so I know what'll happen is they'll go back to our skyways. That is not healthy for them. They'll be too close together. We are a community with 3 million medical visitors a year that have fragile health conditions. And of course, it's not good for them also to be exposed to potential COVID or other hepatitis or other disease. So it's not good for anyone. And so I'm asking for a more permanent space and solution to be offered. I very much support the state's assistance and your backing of the state's involvement in passing a strong bonding bill this session that includes housing and housing infrastructure bonds for an emergency shelter. Because while we put up that 30-bed shelter, the county only opens it for a few months a year. We need something year-round, and we need something that's not people sitting on top of each other, and that's room, obviously, for more than 30 people. So I just want to say, you know, I'm joining all the other mayors and all the other advocates across the state and saying we need a strong solution this year, right now, to help us solve the problems that we have, not just in Rochester, not just in Minneapolis and St. Paul, not just in Duluth, but this has been mentioned all across the state. If we have the will, we can do the right thing. And so I am so thrilled that you are holding this rally despite the conditions. so that the importance of this issue is carried forward. So thank you all so much. Thank you for allowing Rochester to have a voice.
Thank you so much, Mayor Norton, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan May.
Bonjour, everyone listening and watching this rally. My name is Jordan May, Executive Director of the Red Lake Homeless Shelter and member of the Minnesota Tribal Collaborative to Prevent and End Homelessness. I'm speaking on behalf of the need for affordable housing on and around the Minnesota tribal reservations. 6 tribal nations from the Tribal Collaborative participated in the 2018 Wilder Research Reservation Homeless Survey, resulting in 1,138 people meeting HUD's definition of literally homeless. 1,177 people experiencing near homelessness or doubled up, totaling to 2,315 Native American families and individuals experiencing homelessness. Native Americans make up 1% of the state's population, but make up approximately 16% of the state's homeless population. And this percentage is undercounted throughout the Wilder Homeless Survey. We make up 1% of the state's population, but yet 16% of the state's homeless population. Let that sink in a little bit. There is such a great need for affordable housing on each of the 6 tribal reservations that make up the Tribal Collaborative that members of our great nations are forced to move from their homelands that we were forced to live on at first because of the lack of housing. Our Native people are then looking for resources and affordable housing near our surrounding reservations, and then they meet the same barriers they were faced back with on their homeland because of the lack of housing. And then they're forced to move into the big urban areas because of it. Now, one thing that kind of has all of us Tribal Collaborative members scared is this COVID-19 pandemic. Now, one thing that we are scared of is because of so many people are moving from the big urban areas where the pandemic is, hitting very hard, is they're forced to move back home, increasing even more of our homeless numbers, and we have nowhere to house them. So people are actually forced to move back in with grandma and grandpa and with mother and father, and it's creating a big risk because of all the underlying health conditions and everything like that all of our people are facing right now during this pandemic. Now that's why this is probably the 3rd or 4th time that I have speaking on behalf of Homes for All because of the lack of affordable housing. That's why all of us Tribal Collaborative members are in support of this housing bonding bill and to create emergency shelters. Red Lake is fortunate enough to have one of the few homeless shelters in the greater Minnesota area, along with Leech Lake, but some of the other tribal nations don't have those emergency shelters that they need. Those emergency shelters help get the homeless to the resources that they actually need. And I'm very thankful for all the resources I have, but it's just not enough because of the lack of housing. We have so many people that are experiencing homelessness and there's just nowhere to put them. So that's why on behalf of the collaborative and all other tribal nations that are and people experiencing homelessness, and even in the urban areas, we need this more funding for permanent supportive housing, affordable housing, emergency shelters, and more resources in order to help the homeless population. Thank you, Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Now I will turn it over to Deb Kelly.
Hi, my name is Deb Kelly, and I live at Solace. I just wanted to talk to you about 3 important life skills that help me in my recovery and that's stability, work, and affordable housing. With my experience at Solace Apartments, I have gained a stable home. That's very important to me as someone that was homeless for several years. Just being able to have a place to call home is amazing, and it's mine. That just means so much to me. My kids are all grown and they can come here whenever they need to. I haven't had that for a really long time. I have gainful employment for 9 months at Dairy Queen. I have been responsible and reliable, and I even advanced in my position, and now I'm a shift lead. They believe in me. They help me get my confidence and my self-esteem back. I train others to do my job because they say I've done so well and they like my work. That makes me feel really good. I have also learned accountability by paying my rent every month. Living in affordable housing, the rent is adjusted to what I make, and that helps reduce the stress of being able to keep my rent paid and to keep my home. They worked with me when I was behind and let me make affordable arrangements without the threat of being evicted. I'm able to stay focused on my recovery and have a job where I can afford to keep my housing. These are the things that are important and that matter to me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Deb, for joining us. And next, I am going to turn it over to Mayor Carter from the city of St. Paul. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Good morning.
You're good.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to join you all, and I appreciate all of you taking the time this morning to focus on this very important and absolutely critical topic for us. You know, we're in a crisis right now, and the extent to which this moment actually is an incredible crisis for families across St. Paul, across Minnesota, across our country cannot be overstated. We know that that's absolutely critical. Right here in St. Paul, we know that that's having an enormous effect on families, on children, on residents, all over our community. We have been working very hard, and I know Minneapolis has, I know Rochester, Duluth, and all of our communities across the state have been to support and serve our families and our populations. That includes efforts to make sure that homeless youth have access to housing, have access to space. That includes navigating and working to try to keep a number of tent encampments across our city safe, stable, and clean and healthy. That's very important. We know that our cities, our communities are all battling these same types of challenges right now at the same time. And we also know that we can't do it all by ourselves. That's why we need strong state action. That's why we need strong federal action. That's going to be very critical as we continue to move forward. One of the things, and I appreciate the comments earlier about some of the disparities, we're tracking very closely the fact that this COVID-19 pandemic, both on a public health side and on an economic side, is having enormous disparate impacts on our all of our communities of color, on our indigenous communities, and very specifically on our African American communities as well. We know that those are the communities that started off in the most challenging spot in the first place, many of them. And so to have this combined impact is pretty hurtful and pretty devastating. Right now, today, if you look at the news, you can see two conflicting headlines. One, that April, this last month, has been the worst month for jobs in the United States since the Great Depression. And two, that our stock market is up by like 300 points today. That is an obscene and offensive paradox. It's an obscene and offensive contradiction, but it proves what so many of us have known forever, that as we see the talking heads on TV and on the national news talk about the economy going up and going down, that economy as defined by the health and the momentum of the stock market has for a very long time been divorced from the economic realities that Americans, that Minnesotans, that St. Paulites face on a day-to-day basis. As we move forward, I'll tell you one thing, I've stopped using the word recovery, because when we think about recovery, it means, you know, I run every day, and after I run, I want to recover. That means I want to get back to the point of stability that I was at before I took this run. So when we say recovery, that sounds to me like we think that we were in a sustainable, safe place back in January, back in February, before this pandemic really took hold. And that's not the truth. We need a full-scale economic reconstruction that changes the way we approach how we participate in our economy. That has to start with housing, and not just addressing homelessness after the fact. That has to address the entire spectrum of housing, of home ownership, of affordability, of affordable rents. That entire spectrum must be addressed, because if we don't, we'll recover ourselves right back to the starting line of what had us so vulnerable to this type of crisis in the first place. I'm hopeful that, one, we can see strong action on housing at the state and the federal levels to give our local communities the support that we need to do this in a sustainable way. One, I am hopeful that as we debrief the lessons that we've learned from this moment, that it's not just about masks and it's not just about social distancing, but it's that we finally learn for once and for all that when anybody in our community, anybody in our state can't access housing, when anybody in our state can't take 2 weeks off of work to recover from an illness or care for a sick child, when anybody in our community can't afford to go to the doctor and access basic preventative medical care when they're sick or concerned about their health and well-being, then that threatens the safety, stability, and health of every single person in our community. That's what Martin Luther King once called this web of connectedness, wherein whatever impacts one of us directly impacts all of us indirectly. I am hopeful that we can move forward from this moment with a new understanding and a new commitment to operationalize the words of our favorite former late Senator Paul Wellstone, that we all do better when we all do better. All of that has to start with housing. I'm in this fight. I appreciate you being in this fight with me, and I look forward to us continuing this on the long haul.
Thank you so much, Mayor Carter. We appreciate this. I'm going to now turn it over to Stacy Junkus.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Stacy Junkus, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for Clinical Health at Catholic Charities of St. Paul and Minneapolis. And as such, what I do is help with mental health and substance abuse problems across the housing platforms. But I also supervise our recuperative care programs, both in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And those are for homeless folks who have been hospitalized. And what we do is have a place for them to come and continue their healing rather than go back to just a shelter. Minnesota certainly was having a terrible time with homelessness well before COVID-19. We've witnessed it in our shelters and our housing programs. We've reached maximum capacity, and we were forced to turn people away. With the current public health and economic crisis, though, our state must deepen its commitment to affordable housing more than ever before. Catholic Charities has been fortunate to receive bonding dollars in the past, and we have been able to create more stable housing. Most recently was at Dorothy Day Place in St. Paul. We really know then firsthand how important the bonding bills are for creating this housing stability. One of the things that I see the most is the huge impact that housing instability has on health. I see this every day when I work with people in our shelter and housing programs. You know, I just started with Catholic Charities about 14 months ago. And where I was housed is where I'm speaking to you from today, which is the Exodus program in Minneapolis. And we serve 95 individuals who have been long-term homeless. The very first thing I noticed when I started working here was the loss of limbs. I have never seen so many people without one leg or without two legs in anywhere in the regular population. You know, I had thought when I first came in, well, this must be veterans. And, you know, I had read about IEDs and the impact of those. But really, what I was seeing were folks who had untreated diabetes, people who had been hit by a bus or hit by a train, and yet others who had serious substance abuse problems. One of my duties in the past year has also been to talk with the medical examiner when we have a death in one of our housing facilities. I'm doing that because I really want to do our best to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our residents healthy. I have been told repeatedly by the medical examiner that our residents died of natural causes. It doesn't seem normal to me, though, that someone dies at age 35 or 47 or 60 years old. The toll that homelessness takes on bodies is absolutely devastating. Now, over the past several weeks, COVID-19 and Public Health Administration has encouraged people to stay at home. What we know is that if you don't have a home, you can't stay at home. It really highlights the need for significant state investment for more shelter and affordable housing. We're really happy to support the Homes for All request to include affordable housing in a bonding bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm now going to turn it over to Amanda Baker.
Hello, my name is Amanda Baker. I'm also a resident at Solace here in St. Peter. I am a grateful addict in recovery as well. I'm 39 years old. I am a single mother to one beautiful 13-year-old boy. Thank you for listening to a piece of my journey in which surrounds by receiving affordable housing. Affordable housing is difficult to receive in this rural area. The population here is too large for the limited affordable housing we get. When I applied for affordable housing, I waited over 2 years to get to the top of the list. In the meantime, my son and I slept on the couches in my mother's basement. I struggled with the notion that there's people without families who cannot help them like how my mother helped us. I am one Minnesotan who was blessed to receive affordable housing. Once I settled into a home of my own, I decided to go after education. Because of affordable housing, I did achieve an education, which was a dream of mine as a little girl. I achieved an Associate's of Liberal Arts and a Bachelor's of Science in Social Work. I brought my degree. Again, because of affordable housing and achievement of education, my son and I have a chance to live above poverty line. My son was able to watch his mother do whatever it took to complete a respectful goal, such as education. Also, my son now has the tools to go after his hopes and dreams as he grows into a man. Again, thank you for listening, how affordable housing has enhanced my future and my life as a whole. Please give this gift to others so that we can make Minnesota a stronger community. Thank you.
All right, I will turn it over to Diane Larson with Minnesota NARO.
Good morning. I am Diane Larson, Executive Director of both the Itasca County and the Grand Rapids HRAs in northeastern Minnesota. I'm speaking to you today as the current chair of the Minnesota NARO Legislative Committee, advocating on behalf of our 154 member HRAs across the state. We are asking the legislature to provide general obligation bonds to support public housing rehabilitation across our state. Public housing rehab funds are used for major capital improvements to address health, safety, and energy efficiency projects, and the need is great. In a recent study commissioned by Minnesota NARO, Over $350 million is needed to address the immediate critical need in public housing units in Minnesota. This amount of need can only be tackled if everyone contributes. The housing authorities through using their federal dollars to match the state dollars and our local rents that we gather from residents. Itasca County HRA, for example, owns a project of public housing of 40 units. This is a scattered site public housing project across 6 buildings in 2 different communities here in Itasca County. We maintain a 98% occupancy rate, and the average income of our residents, most of whom are elderly, disabled, or families with children, is $17,800 per year. It is because of the Minnesota legislature and all of you on the call today that I have been able to access the state POP funding using my federal capital funds as match for critical items like a boiler replacement, a fire alarm system replacement, and a ventilation system to correct an extremely poor air quality in 2 of these buildings. The dollars I have leveraged through the Minnesota POP program would have been more than 12 years of my annual federal capital fund dollars. These critical projects cannot wait for 12 years. We must preserve these scarce housing resources and protect the health and safety of our residents. In the last 4 funding cycles of the POP program, $45.5 million has been awarded for the rehabilitation, impacting over 6,600 publicly owned housing units statewide. But this investment represents only 13% of that immediate critical need. We are very grateful for the resources provided, but I am urging the state to continue to preserve this very important housing resource. At every stage of life, where we live is the foundation for our health, our education, our safety, and our economic well-being. I strongly urge the passage of GO bonds to support public housing rehabilitation across our state. Public housing is a very needed housing resource, so let's make sure that we preserve it. Thank you to Homes for all the work that you've been doing and for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you so much, Diane. And next up, we have Erica Coleman.
Hi, thank you. My name is Erica Coleman. I'm a real estate and finance professional with over 20 years experience. I bring my personal experiences and the stories of those that I have worked with and advocated for throughout the years here in Minnesota. And as a Minnesota native, Black woman, and community advocate, I speak to the discriminatory practices and lack of legislation, action, and support in stabilizing Black and African American housing, which is a basic human right, and no one should be without decent, affordable, and dignified shelter. As a realtor, I personally have experienced housing instability and homelessness, and as well as being displaced from my own community. This is exacerbated by me being Black and a woman and a mother. There needs to be funding and more funding for housing development, repair, rehabilitation, and preservation, and access to opportunity to own, build equity, and build wealth with a focus on African American community, which is structurally disenfranchised, marginalized, and blatantly discriminated against in policy. Policy and funding for housing should be intentional to atone for wrongdoings as well as a basic human right. The Wilder Research report that was completed on homelessness in 2018 cited the racist and discriminatory economic and housing policies, along with generational poverty, that continue to play a role in the overrepresentation of African American and American Indian people in homeless populations. The economic impact of not bringing everyone up to an economic level above poverty, which starts with housing, is more detrimental to Minnesota than doing nothing or not doing enough. Minnesota has some of, if not the greatest disparities between Black and white populations in the areas of police brutality, wealth, achievement, income, ownership, which, as well as health and opportunity, all exacerbated by COVID-19, which is disproportionately negatively impacting Black Minnesotans in all areas, as well as leading to our death. However, one of the main factors for addressing these is intentional policy, specific and abundant for housing, safe, affordable, and accessible for all. Thank you, Homes for all that you have done, and I cannot ask enough to pass the bonding bills as proposed by Homes for All.
Thank you, Erica. Now I'm going to turn it over to Senator Champion.
On a earlier call with.
You were on mute. I just unmuted you, so we can hear you now.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
now you can hear me. Okay, I was wondering why I was getting that look like, oh, I can't hear him. I was just on a call, a finance call, and we've been doing Zoom, and I wanted to really get off because I wanted to at least spend a little time with you before I have to get on the phone with my son's teachers. So the first thing I want to say is thank you to the Homes for All Coalition, to every advocate in Minnesota who's fighting for other Minnesotans. I often like to remind people that we are in this together. Housing is an important part of life, right? And housing is a right, and I believe it is the gateway to stability. And for me, when families are stabilized, we see better educational outcomes for children, wealth building, and the realization of dreams and aspirations. Erica so eloquently talked about all the things that it means to her and all the things that we should do in order to make sure that we're closing that disparities gap, that we're doing everything to make sure that every aspect of housing is available. And I concur with that. And I also concur, and I'm happy to say that I've been fighting for the Homes for All proposal. So I've been fighting for $565 million because I believe that that proposal presents preservation of current affordable housing options. I believe it also expands the number, or at least incentivizes us to expand the number of affordable housing units. And I believe that it also it also creates rehabilitation of public housing units to make sure that low income families aren't living in uninhabitable housing. One of the things that I heard Mayor Carter say, he talked about the full spectrum of housing being put on the table, and I totally concur with him. Homelessness is something as well that must be tackled, and the root causes of our homeless population must be addressed. And especially when you think in terms of young people are also sleeping under bridges. I was in fact talking to a young lady who's going to the Minneapolis Community and Technical College, and she talked about the fact that they are struggling to stay in school, and many of her student friends are sleeping under bridges. And to me, that's unconscionable. And I think that we have to make sure that everyone has a safe space to live and to exist. And when I talked about the root causes, to me, is not only that we should deal with the physical notion of housing, but also all the other challenges that may be a barrier to people being able to ascertain affordable housing, like mental health, healthcare, chemical dependency, or substance abuse. And how about earning a livable wage? I remember when we were having this conversation about a minimum wage, I really kept encouraging people to talk about a livable wage, because we want to make sure that families are able to exist and to live and to thrive and to do all the things that they want to, whether it's save for the kids to go to college or go to vocational school, whatever it is. I believe that housing is the start of that, because it helps us to build wealth, but it's also to stabilize our family. So I remain committed, and I will continue to work for the benefit of Minnesotans who need housing, and that housing that is affordable. And so I just wanted to make sure I could stop by and thank you, and reestablish my commitment, not just to your proposal, but also the root causes, but also to make sure it's clear that we are also thinking about other housing options as well. So that's what I will say, and thank you again for all the work that you are doing, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much, Senator Champion, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rome. Rome Daring is one of Homes for All at-large members on the coordinating team, and he fills a position. We have two at-large members that fill the position of people with lived experience. So Rome, thank you for everything you and Janelle have done for us this year, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. As Allison said, I am a Home for All team member and Freedom from the Streets. I'm from Micah and Street Voices of Change. I also sit on the leadership team for Envision Community. And right now we're trying to establish a dignified home for people who are homeless now. And right now it looks like it's going forward to make sure that people can live a dignified life. Right now, I would like to talk about the bonding bill for $500 million because we need affordable housing because there's no affordable housing. And out here, they might label it as affordable housing, but there's no affordable housing. Right now, people are on the streets trying to figure out where they can go every day because right now this quarantine have them just walking around stranded, trying to figure out what they're gonna do with their life. Because of the quarantine, it gives more emphasis to the need of affordable housing. Housing is so hard to get right now because people cannot get affordable wages, as Senator Champion said, so that they can live a dignified life. Every day I'm out here working with people who are homeless, and it is hard for us to figure out how we can exist within the community. And that's what we all would like to be a part of the community so that we can feel as though we have a community to depend on and to help. Affordable housing is very needed out here because we don't have nowhere to set our roots and to I'm trying not to get into the fact that people are out here homeless and trying to establish a family background because it is hard because a lot of people trying to get their kids back because of their kids been snatched from them because they don't have the housing that they need to show that they can support their kids. So right now, from Freedom from the Streets, we are trying to fight the issue of affordable housing and parental rights being given back to people who's struggling to survive out here with their families. So I don't have much to say, but I would like if anyone have any questions for me to go ahead and ask them at this time.
Thanks, Rome, so much for sharing with us. We're going to try and keep our questions to the Q&A feature, and then maybe we might have some time at the end to answer them. So we appreciate you sharing your story with us again and all the work you do with the coalition. Now I'm over to Carrie Johnson for just a quick update on some of the other work we've been focusing on at the legislature.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending today. So Libby and I, we are the policy co-chairs for the Homes for All Coalition. And we have been trying our best to answer some questions in the chat feature, but have gotten a number of questions that are focused on housing assistance dollars, particularly through the particularly as it relates to COVID-19 emergency response with the eviction moratorium. We know so many people are struggling because a one size fits all response does not work for for everyone. We know that people are struggling. There are small business owners who haven't received any sort of financial support at the moment. We know that there are people who are already living very close to experiencing housing instability or an eviction for non-payment of rent. And something that I just wanted to give a brief update on what we as the coalition have been advocating for. So as we started out the legislative session, we were very focused on our bonding request, as Allison and so many others have mentioned, focusing on getting funding in order to build and preserve affordable housing. And once the COVID-19 emergency or pandemic happened, we had to shift our perspective and fully knowing that there are a lot of people that are out there struggling. And so what we have done back in March, mid-March, we shifted our advocacy efforts to emergency response, both for housing assistance as well as helping with those experiencing homelessness and helping to advocate for our shelters as well. We did receive $32 million. Well, not we, but we were advocating for $50 million to support those experiencing homelessness in our shelters. We received $32 million to help with that. And we've been advocating for $100 million in the Family Homeless Prevention and Assistance Program, which is an existing program, and it's a flexible tool and resource that anyone can access, really. There are 20 providers throughout the state to help cover their housing costs. This program is already well oversubscribed, and only 10% of the people that are eligible to receive it are able to access those funds historically, which is why we are advocating for that 100 million number. In the Minnesota House of Representatives, it was included in an emergency response bill and passed off the House floor yesterday. It also extended the eviction moratorium, and I know that that is still going to be discussed, hopefully in negotiations, to provide some more protections. And then it would also extend and include the foreclosure moratorium as well. And then in the Senate, that number for housing assistance is $30 million, and there are different timelines for the extension of the policy, the eviction moratorium and the foreclosure moratorium. And I would encourage folks, if they have other questions on that, certainly we can do our best to answer that. And then I just want to say also a huge shout out and thank you to Homeline, who has been a great advocate and partner with the coalition in helping to get that policy language nailed down in terms of the eviction moratorium. And if you or someone you know has questions about the eviction moratorium or you're concerned, please reach out to Homeline, and then also contact the Attorney General's office. So thank you.
Thank you for that update, Carrie. All right, next we have Stephen Horsfield from Simpson Housing.
Thanks, Allison. My name is Steve Horsfield. I'm the Executive Director with Simpson Housing Services. Thank you all for attending our virtual rally. Thank you for everyone who's provided testimony and for everyone coming out in support of our Homes for All agenda as we near the end of our legislative session. Simpson Housing Services has been operating shelter in South Minneapolis and supportive housing across the metro region for over 40 years. My role this morning is to call attention to the portion of our proposed bonding bill that is allocated to shelter projects. Bonding is the tool that our state uses to invest in infrastructure. And arguably, safe and sustainable housing is the element of our state infrastructure that most warrants substantial public investment at this time. Housing ends homelessness. At the same time, shelter saves lives as a temporary housing solution that also serves as a critical step on the pathway from homelessness to housing stability. Shelter is the place where most folks are able to connect with advocacy and housing resources. We're fortunate to have Senator Senjum and Representative Hassan as our chief bill authors, along with support from other key legislators. We are blessed with a number of well-informed public officials across our state who understand the critical need for state investment in shelter, many of whom have been good enough to join us this morning. We've steadily responded to one crisis after another over the past couple of years. At the Wall of Forgotten Natives, we quickly ramped up a navigation center model where we offered temporary shelter and connected 100 guests to permanent housing opportunities. We saw a tremendous outpouring of support last Christmas when tragically the Drake Hotel caught fire, which also demonstrated the precarious nature of our temporary shelter resources. And then this past winter, as we saw the numbers of unsheltered folks increasing across the state, we were grateful that our governor rallied private support for expanded winter shelter solutions. And now COVID-19 has introduced a new threat to the health of those members of our community without stable housing, as it disproportionately impacts people living in poverty. We've been working in coalition with mayors from across the state who are often faced with the very difficult decisions of how to respond to unsheltered homelessness. We're asking all of you to join us in supporting the Homes for All agenda during these critical last few days of the legislative session and to help bring critical state investment to shelter resources. In Minneapolis, we have been grateful to Mayor Frey for his steady commitment to expanding housing resources and ending homelessness. We are thankful for his partnership, for his support and his friendship, and I'm happy now to introduce the Mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey.
Well, thank you so much, Steve and Simpson Housing, for all of your work. Thank you, Homes for All. You know, I am not a religious person, but this really is God's work right now. The work that you are doing has a heightened importance right now because the decisions that we make, the actions that we take literally have life or death consequences, and we're no longer making decisions based on dollars and cents, but this is based on lives saved and lives lost. And because of that, the work that you all are doing, the advocacy, the support, the direct work in shelters, it will make a difference. So I know that this is tough right now. I know that in many cases, there's a lot of pressure that needs to be alleviated, whether it's in our shelter system or otherwise, but like, this matters. This matters to a lot of people. And so I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you. I'm a believer that housing is a right. And as advocates for the Homes for All agenda, you know, I know that we totally share that belief. And it's difficult to talk about access to homes without first recognizing that COVID-19 has made a situation that was already really trying even worse. We had over 28,000 households, not people, households in Minnesota that were 30% of AMI and simultaneously cost burden. This means that for way too many Minnesotans, they were just like one paycheck away from experiencing homelessness in some form. And so, you know, with skyrocketing housing costs, with rising homelessness, and thousands that are also living in some form of substandard housing, Minneapolis and the entire state, we really need a bonding bill that addresses our growing housing and homelessness response needs while giving local economies an economic boost. And I'll tell you, with respect to Minneapolis, that money is all the more critical right now. We are experiencing somewhere up to about a $200 million revenue shortfall this year. And we have set forth two priorities during this pandemic. They're a bit simplistic, but they're nonetheless really important. The first is that the core city services that the city traditionally provides will continue to function. The second is that the people who are struggling most, we will prioritize first. And the people who are struggling the most, in many cases, and in most cases, are people who are experiencing homelessness. And so what we're doing to support our residents is we recently announced the creation of a $3 million emergency housing assistance fund. That's in addition to the business assistance fund that is going to be targeted at households at 30% of AMI and below. And I just want to give you an idea of the need here. Those $3 million will fund around 1,500 applications. Now, just over like a week's period, not even a week, we received 8,000 applications. So 1,500 is what we're able to meet. 8,000 is what came in the door. That right there should tell you that people need help right now. And, you know, I would say and argue that more than any other issue out there, we need funding for homelessness. We need funding for deeply affordable housing. That is kind of that baseline of security. That is that safety net that we have an obligation as government, as leaders, as philanthropy, as nonprofits, as private sector, all of us, we have this obligation right now. And so, and I know I'm speaking for the, you know, the whole homeless advocacy community when I say that. And as I speak, you know, right now there are homeless encampments that are growing in Minneapolis, and there are 2 large encampments that have already reached unsafe numbers and pose very serious public health concerns and safety risks, and we need to help. And in the Twin Cities, the number of people staying outside and not in normal shelters saw a 97% increase between 2015 and 2018. And as we know, over the coming months, those numbers are going to get more difficult. So this is really the time to step up. But you know, this is the time when your work really matters. You know, we aren't involved in this work to make easy decisions feel brave. We aren't in this work to make it seem like we're doing a whole lot when, you know, just provide lip service. That we're in this line of work because we care. We care about people. We care about the issue of homelessness, and we want to help. And so we're going to do everything that we can to alleviate some of the pressures, both in terms of the spacing and in terms of the staffing in our shelters. And we're going to do everything we can to support the Homes for All agenda because, you know, you all are doing it. You've got the right mentality. We are 100% behind you. So thank you so much. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Mayor Fry, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Next up is Deidre Schmidt with Common Bond.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. So my name is Deidre Schmidt. I have the pleasure of leading Common Bond Communities. We provide affordable homes and support services to about 13,000 people, and the majority of those are right here in Minnesota. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has underscored for all of us the critical role that housing plays not only in protecting health and well-being of individuals and families, but also revealed housing's role as a measure for public health. And this has really reinforced Common Bond's belief that a stable home is really the foundation for everything else in a person's life. It's also a really essential building block for a vibrant workforce and a growing economy. Our work of providing safe and stable homes has always been important before the pandemic. It's rightfully considered essential in response to the health crisis, and it will be even more critical than ever as we seek together to recover from the economic impacts of COVID-19 as quickly as possible. Since 2012, we've built or preserved over 600 apartment homes using the Housing Infrastructure Bond, or HIB. HIB is a unique source that allows our organization and others like us to get to otherwise hard to address housing needs of very low income folks and previously homeless individuals. And I can tell you that HIBs, which don't exist in the other states where we work, allow us to do more for more people in greater need. In this time of year last year, Governor Walz held a press conference at Common Bond's Upper Post Veterans Community, which is near Fort Snelling. He chose that site because the housing infrastructure bonds were used to create safe, affordable homes for veterans and their families who had previously experienced homelessness after serving our country. And I remember one of the residents telling us what it felt like to unlock his own apartment door after so many years of homelessness, and how much pleasure he took and comfort he felt in doing something as basic as having a hot cup of coffee in his own home and frying his own eggs for breakfast. Another resident who is continuing his own healing process at Upper Post brings his therapy dog to visit students and seniors who are also in need of comfort and support. And last week, in the midst of this pandemic, our Upper Post staff were able to move in a new resident who had also been experiencing homelessness while suffering from a severe medical condition. And so this, especially at this time, illustrates how housing can be life-saving. And those are just 3 stories from the thousands of adults and kids and seniors that Common Bond serves every day and that housing organizations like ours attend to. Upper Post is only one example of the type of housing that is so deeply needed and can be unlocked by the housing infrastructure bonds. We have more projects that are shovel ready, but for final funding. At this time, Common Bond alone has 6 projects ready to go that would create almost 450 new units of affordable housing and over 600 construction jobs. And an investment like the one proposed by Homes for All can unlock the power to create something like 3,600 new homes and up to 9,000 jobs. So in simple terms, we need those homes now more than ever, and the housing industry stands ready with projects like the ones I've mentioned to help stimulate our shared economic recovery. Now is not a time to hesitate. Without this funding, there are only enough resources available to fund about 1 out of every 3 projects that are ready to proceed. And even before COVID-19, 56% of people who were experiencing homelessness said that it was because they could not find an affordable place to live. And over 70% of renters who were housed reported compromising health, food, and other important needs in order to make their rent. The money that we invest today will preserve and create homes for generations of Minnesota's workforce and the more Minnesotans that we can get back to work right away. Now is the time for a robust investment to reduce the number of Minnesotans experiencing homelessness, housing instability, and cost burden. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Deidre. Before we move on to our next speakers, we're going to do one more quick poll. So I'll give us about 30 seconds. All right. Everybody can see those results. It's really amazing to watch watch people be responding to this while we're all on this webinar or on this Zoom webinar with you. Okay, so our next 2 speakers are from the House of Representatives. Collectively, they are responsible for helping to make housing a key part of the bonding bill and have some of our biggest champions in the Minnesota legislature. Representative Erdahl is from Grove City and is the lead Republican on the Capital Investments Committee. And Representative Erdahl has been a longtime supporter of the Homes for All Coalition. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Okay.
Well, then I'll get right into this. Thank you for the opportunity today. Thank you for the work you're doing in housing. I've chaired the bonding bill twice, and had housing provisions in the bills. I've worked with Representative Hausman quite a bit, and Alice, who you'll be hearing from next, has been a real champion for housing in the state of Minnesota. I'm going to just make some remarks here that I think emphasize, that I do understand and know the importance of this, but then I'll have to do a little reality check at the end and see where we are. Housing is the foundation for everything else in our lives. When people have access to safe, stable, and affordable housing, children excel in school, workers earn, seniors thrive, and communities prosper. Our population is growing faster than our housing market. To keep up with demand, Minnesota will need 10,000 units each year. We need to look to ways to jumpstart housing and increase housing supply. I've said many times how important housing is to our workforce. We can't expect people to come and live in greater Minnesota if they have no place to live and no one to take care of their children. Affordable workforce housing is a critical need for economic development across all parts of Minnesota. We have approved funding for emergency shelters and other provisions in previous COVID bills. There have been a multitude of housing bills proposed this session, and I've signed on as an author to many of them in the hopes that some are going to pass in some fashion. I'm a co-author of the Shelter Capital Bill. 80 of our 87 counties lack enough shelter to serve people experiencing homelessness. We had planned at one point for $200 million in appropriation bonds in the bonding bill. It appears that with the uncertainty right now in the bonding world, where they're going to run a housing appropriation bill separate. And since they are appropriation bonds, it does make sense. And I believe that Representative Hausman has that bill up tomorrow. I have a bill that would give infrastructure relief for cities needing to run utilities to housing projects. We have a great deal of financial uncertainty right now, and we need to be mindful of our future obligations. We should only appropriate what can be used in the coming year, even if that would have a cost that might require cutting from other programs. We need to get people back to work, earning a paycheck, and being able to pay for their housing. But even with that problem, the housing shortage will remain, and we will be able to do that much more when our robust economy returns. I would hope that much of what we'd like to do now could be done then, but that doesn't mean that we still can't do things now. We have a particular situation that's unique at the moment, and that is that the leader of the House Republicans has said that there will be no bonding bill if we don't get a change in the emergency orders of the governor. And so that is kind of the debate right now that we are in. And it's not about the importance of the emergency powers that the governor has, but what we feel is a situation where the legislative authority has been diminished. We'd like to work with the governor to get these things done. And so it puts me in kind of a unique position. I've been strongly advocating to get things done in a bonding bill throughout the session. I still want to do that. I believe that we still will do that. But then I run into problems with folks saying that that a bonding bill isn't a jobs bill. And in listening to the end of Deidre's comments just now, I appreciate some of the things that she was saying, because I do believe that it is important to stimulate our economy and to put people to work to do a jobs bill, to do the bonding bill. And so I guess I will conclude just by saying to you that we're going to do what we can. There will be housing bills passed. Which ones, what they do, and how much we can spend remain to be seen. But I certainly laud the goal that you have, and we will do as much as we can do. And I wish I could be more definite as to which bills are going to pass, but right now I can't. So, any comments or questions?
Thank you so much, Representative Erdahl, for joining us this morning. So next up, we have Representative Hausman. Representative Hausman is from St. Paul and the chair of the Housing, Finance, and Policy Committee. She similarly has been a longtime supporter of Homes for All, and we are thankful for her leadership.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be with you. I have to tell you, I wish we could be together physically. I miss it so. This has been really very, very difficult. It's good to see your faces, but for now, this will have to do. First of all, just a major thank you to Homes for All and all of the advocates who are part of that effort, who have, and there's so much to be thankful for, but I want to call out two things in particular that you have accomplished. You've organized us around an agenda. And we have been more focused in the last few years because of the work of Homes for All, organizing around an agenda. And your work has made housing bipartisan. All of your effort in reaching out to legislators in the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, your work has made it bipartisan, and that was demonstrated last year with strong bipartisan votes in the legislature. And I just want to acknowledge my partnership with Representative Erdahl in some of that work. Because I didn't hear earlier speakers, I hope I'm not duplicating, but I'm going to just talk a little bit about where we are with our legislative agenda. You know, we have the housing assistance bill, and this is $100 million for housing assistance for those who have lost their jobs and are in danger of not being able to, as Mayor Fry said, being one paycheck away from not being able to pay their bills. My bill traveled separately through committee and to the floor, and then it was also put in as part of a larger package of 4 bills that all are COVID related and attempting to help with economic protection for so many people. And that traveled to the floor yesterday and passed. The housing assistance is part of the increase of salary for personal care attendants, increase in broadband, help for small business as much as we do in the housing assistance bill. And the good news was on the House floor, this $100 million, there was no pushback. There was no particular going after that portion of the bill. So the other 3 areas all had some points of criticism, but no pushback on the housing assistance. As Representative Erdahl mentioned, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., the Homes for All bill will come before the Capital Investment Committee. It's been heard there, but as sometimes happens during these times in the session, we start looking for vehicle bills that we can move to another place so that we have a plan B. You saw that happen last year when, unfortunately, we didn't get the larger bonding bill, and so in special session, we dealt just with the housing infrastructure bonds in this special session for 60 minutes. So that's what we're going to, 60 million. That's what we're going to do tomorrow morning. We'll take up the Homes for All bill, and we will delete the general obligation bonds because they are going to stay in the Capital Investment Committee, and we're just moving out the housing infrastructure bonds. The reason for that, every other bill passes with a simple majority, but a bonding bill with general obligation bonding requires a supermajority. So it is easier to pass housing infrastructure bonds because they, as appropriation bonds, can pass with a simple majority. So that's the point of it. It's my understanding is it's moving those to another place in the process so we can have a vehicle bill, as we call it, for potential action later. So there's much undone. We had exactly 1 housing committee meeting this year because of the COVID crisis, and because we lost a couple of our committee slots early in the session. We had so much to do and so many bills to hear, and all of that was put aside as we deal with the COVID related bills. I don't know if we're open for questions or if there's anything in particular you would like to hear some more about, but I certainly would be willing to do that.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Hausman and Representative Erdahl. We are not doing questions at the moment, but we will probably, Libby and I will probably be in touch with both of you to relay a couple of questions, and then just get in touch to check in with you both. Before I turn it back over to Allison, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize our co-chair, our wonderful co-chair that's been moderating our rally today, Allison Strake. As she mentioned in her opening comments, this is her 3rd and final year of chairing the coalition, and I just want to recognize her for a moment for all of the hard work that she's done, the countless hours that she's put in. There are a lot of things behind the scenes that don't get seen by advocates, including strategic planning, planning for things like this rally, but also preparing for testimony, and just coordinating meetings in general. So we just wanted to recognize her and thank her. It's not quite the same as in person, but the coalition work would not be the same without you. So thank you.
Well, thanks for making me cry, Carrie, with hundreds of people watching. It's been my honor to serve as your co-chair. The coordinating team's been wonderful. All of the advocates have been wonderful. So it's bittersweet for me to have this be my final. This will be my big final hurrah. So thanks for everybody. I do want to say that because of all of you, we did have a tweet chat this morning from 9:30 to 10, and a bunch of us are still tweeting during the rally that hashtag bonds for housing is trending in Minneapolis, so yay. So we're going to ask now for everybody who's participating to do a live action alert with us. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And we are asking you to please make 2 phone calls, one to Representative Hortman and one to Senator Gazelka. Both of their phone numbers are listed. It's the same script for both of them, so you only need to worry about the one that you can see. I have somebody who is timing the phone calls, so I'm going to be quiet while she's doing that, and you can all make your phone calls. We're going to come back and do a poll, and then we'll have our wrap-up comments. Okay, looks like we're just about wrapping up. Hopefully they just received hundreds of phone calls from all of you while we are on this rally. So we're going to do one final poll to find out, did you call House and Senate leadership? Okay, I imagine some people are still making calls and some people are still trying to answer the poll. But we see that at least it looked like at least 105 when I stopped the polling had made phone calls. I do want to remind everybody, we do have an action alert out there where you can email your own representative. And you can find that on the Homes for All website under our blogs. And in closing, I want to say that Homes for All looks forward to working with both chambers of the legislature and the governor's office to find a path forward to help meet Minnesota's affordable housing needs. And let's continue to go big so everyone can go home. Everybody on the panelists, thanks everybody so much for joining us. Yes, there's Carrie, there's our panelists. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.